And welcome to the Archives of Warcraft. And who's that guy? This is discussing the background stories of major lore characters in the World of Warcraft game at the moment. And this week it's going to be Illidan Stormrage. Illidan Stormrage, born in Suramar, twin brother to Malfurion. And while Malfurion was all about the druid life, Illidan had a number of talents, and particular talent for the arcane. As such, he decided to take the path of the caster much more. Now, along with his brother Malfurion, they both fell for the priestess Tyrande, and Tyrande always knew that she would have to choose between them. In his increasingly reckless style, Illidan was always trying to impress her with his abilities, and this often made him do very risky things. During the War of the Ancients, Illidan ever want to see the problems in simple terms rather than thinking about the consequences of his actions, even killed some of his own followers in order to defeat the Burning Legion, something for which he was reviled. What you'll see when we go through this story is at every turn, Illidan actually does what he sets out to do. He defeats the Legion every time, but he does so in a way that upsets his own people. During the War of the Ancients, amongst other events, Illidan had a plan to capture the demon soul and close off the portals that the Legion were using to invade Azeroth. He became increasingly rash with his actions as a result of seeds of doubt placed in his mind by the satyr Xavius, whom we eventually met in the Emerald Nightmare. He fed on two of Illidan's fears. One, that Tyrande would choose Malfurion, as indeed she did. And Xavius was putting it to him, though, if Malfurion was no longer around, then she might choose Illidan. But the second thing, and the thing that filled him with the most horror, was that Malfurion had come to the conclusion that they did not have the strength to defeat the Burning Legion to prevent the invasion. So what they had to do was to destroy the portal. And the way to do this was to destroy the Well of Eternity. The Well of Eternity was a source of magical power that the Highborn in particular and the followers of the arcane magic amongst the elves relied upon for, if nothing else, their great power, but potentially even their immortality. Now, for Night Elves, this was no great loss, but for the Highborn and for Illidan, although a Night Elf, very much a master of the arcane, he felt that this would diminish his power, and he couldn't abide this. So he came up with another plan instead. Now, in order to try and capture the Demon Soul, he had to pretend to side with the Shara and the Burning Legion. In doing so, he was brought before Sargeras himself, who gave him a gift. He bore out Illidan's eyes and placed within them glowing orbs that would allow him to see magic itself. Hence why he now wears the blindfold. He doesn't have eyes in the normal sense. Tyrande was appalled at this. But in his own mind, Illidan had done this. He'd made sacrifices, as far as he could see it, in order to defeat the Burning Legion, to save Azeroth, and ultimately to save Tyrande herself. But she didn't see it that way. At the end of the War of the Ancients, as a result of Ashara's actions, the Well of Eternity was indeed destroyed, and it created the Cataclysm, which separated out the Eastern Kingdoms from Kalimdor, along with other land masses such as Northrend. In its place is the Maelstrom, which we now see in the centre of Azeroth. But Illidan was a little bit crafty, and in advance of this event, he had taken 7 vials worth of the Well of Eternity's waters. He used some of them to create a new Well of Eternity. This appalled Malfurion because he would see this as another beacon for the Legion. This would allow the Legion to one day return to Azeroth, drawing them like moths to the flame. For what was seen as his actions against the Night Elf people, Illidan was imprisoned beneath Nordrassil, the World Tree. For 10,000 years he was watched over by the Wardens, including Maiev Shadowsong. Eventually the Burning Legion did return. Tyrande believed that Illidan could help turn the tide. Malfurion disagreed and in fact forbade her to release Illidan. But, you know, Tyrande's not one to take orders, and she even bloodied her own hands by killing Wardens in order to free Illidan, as she had no authority to insist upon his release. Upon his release, Illidan, not very happy with the Night Elves, not very happy with Malfurion for locking him away for 10,000 years, for accusing him of being the betrayer when he himself considers that he was betrayed, agrees to help, but he says that he is helping Tyrande. He's not doing this for the Night Elves anymore. He's not doing it for his brother. He's not doing it for Azeroth. He'll do it for Tyrande. Eventually, Illidan meets up with Arthas in the Fellwood, and Arthas explains to him that the corruption there is down to an artifact known as the Skull of Gul'dan, and that if Illidan could take this skull, then the corruption would disappear. Illidan eventually comes across the Skull of Gul'dan and then decides to consume it and absorb its power for his own. This turns him into a demon. It indeed does defeat the Legion again. Malfurion comes along, wondering where Illidan is, and Illidan reveals himself to his brother as the demon before him, at which point Malfurion is so revulsed that he exiles Illidan from Night Elf society. Yet again, we've got a situation where, from Illidan's point of view, he's done what was necessary to defeat the Burning Legion. He's made a sacrifice himself in doing so, and is cast out by his own people, by his own brother. After this time, Illidan was being tracked down by two foes. One, Maiev Shadowsong, the warden who wanted him back in her care, and secondly, Kil'jaeden, lieutenant of the Burning Legion, who was not best pleased with Illidan so far, but eventually found him and gave him a chance to redeem himself by destroying the Lich King. The Lich King was the tortured remains of Ner'zhul, the Orc shaman who had defied the Burning Legion, but he was no longer their puppet. He was not following their instructions, so Kil'jaeden had decided to destroy the Lich King with Illidan as his weapon. Illidan was to retrieve the Eye of Sargeras and use it to create a powerful earthquake to bring down the Frozen Throne. As Illidan had consumed the Skull of Gul'dan, he had all of Gul'dan's memories and knew where to go to find the Broken Isles. But he would need allies. He called upon the Naga to help him, whom they agreed under the leadership of Lady Vash. Illidan set sail for the Broken Isles, with some Naga left behind to try and prevent the Wardens from following him. Unfortunately for Illidan, they were not successful and followed soon behind. Illidan quickly found the Tomb of Sargeras and was able to obtain the Eye of Sargeras, but Maiev Shadowsong caught him. In order to escape, Illidan brought down the walls of the temple around him and then ported out. Maiev Shadowsong was able to do the same thing with her magical powers, but was unable to do the same for her wardens, who perished. Illidan and Lady Vash then began to use the Eye of Sargeras to attack the root of the mountain upon which the Frozen Throne was located, but this was doing untold damage to the world of Azeroth at large. Malfurion sensed this and set out to stop Illidan, eventually doing so, and with Illidan once again captured, it transpired that Tyrande appeared to have fallen, much to the dismay of both Malfurion and Illidan. She had been fighting against a great host of undead after meeting Kel'Thas Sunstrider. However, Kel'Thas piped up at this point, saying that no one had actually seen Tyrande fall. This was merely Maiev Shadowsong relaying this information as if it were fact. Kel'Thas says that she could still be alive. All they saw was that she was washed downriver. Illidan offered to help find her, saying that his Naga could find her much more quickly than either Maiev, Kel'Thas, or Malfurion would be able to. Malfurion agreed and allowed Illidan to search for her. Illidan's Naga indeed managed to save Tyrande and was returned safely to Malfurion's side. In gratitude for the safe return of Tyrande, Malfurion spares Illidan's life but banishes him from Night Elf lands. Illidan decides that he needs to get away, somewhere where the Burning Legion won't find him and where he can build up a power base. He decides to go to Outland. He ensures that all the portals are sealed shut. He takes over the Black Temple with the help of the Broken, who agree to join him. He defeats the Pit Lord Magtheridon, captures him, uses his blood to produce a new race of Fel Orcs, builds up his Illidari, and this is the point where the story takes a little bit of a change, because in the original lore you get the very strong impression he is doing this out of fear for himself. He's been banished properly now from the Night Elves. He's already said he only helped last time against the Burning Legion for Tyrande's sake. Now everyone has forsaken him. He's really just looking after himself. Whereas in the Legion lore, it's sort of been retconned a little bit that he's working to a grand plan to take on the Burning Legion head on. But either way, Kil'jaeden does find him again. Still not happy with Illidan. Illidan says that he was just retreating to build up another force to attack the Lich King more directly. Kil'jaeden allows him to do this. Illidan takes his forces to Northrend itself. The Lich King, sensing the danger, calls Arthas to him. Eventually, Arthas and Illidan meet in single combat, where Arthas defeats Illidan, badly wounding him. Illidan is taken back to Outland by Lady Vash and Kel'Thas Sunstrider. And at this point, we enter the realms of the World of Warcraft itself, where we know from the Burning Crusade that eventually the Dark Portal reopens. We enter there. We take on Illidan. Akama, one of the leaders of the Broken, works with Maiev Shadowsong to eventually all converge on Illidan and to take him out. At the time, we are led to believe that Illidan was simply hiding and building up a huge fortress of troops around him to ward off the Burning Legion as he remains in exile, whereas now the storyline is supposed to be that he was building up his Illidari forces to find artifacts on demon worlds and to take the fight directly to the Burning Legion, as indeed he is now in Legion doing. To my mind, this can be seen as a redemption story that never needed to be, for the only really wicked thing I think Illidan did was to subjugate the Broken on Outland, and this came after many, many times of being shunned by his own people. Because, as I said at the start, everything he did, he sacrificed himself, he sometimes sacrificed his own people, but people who would have fallen anyway against the unassailable might of the Burning Legion, he always found a way to defeat them. And this never seemed to be understood by his own people, by his own brother, in fact. So I always felt a great deal of sympathy for Illidan, and for me, this retconning was never really needed. It doesn't paint Illidan in a better light with the new storyline anyway. But there is the storyline. Most of the events, even though the motivations may have been retconned, the actual events themselves are the same. That's the storyline to the background of Illidan Stormrage. Hope you enjoyed it. If you did, don't forget to like, comment, subscribe and share for further content. And until next time, I'll see you later.